All right, we want to talk about the WSL because it has very much become the league of choice in women's football. A huge number of star-studded names have arrived in the league over the last few weeks. I'm joined on the line by Harriet Drudge of The Athletic. Evening, Harriet.
Good evening.
So, where to start with the big names arriving in the WSL? We might talk about Manchester United because they signed two American World Cup winners in Tobin Heath and Christian Press on one-year deals, which fits in what's been happening at Manchester City and Chelsea as well. What's changed over the last 12 months? Is this just the continuing boost from England's success at the World Cup in recent years and the renewed interest levels, or is there something else going on that all these players are arriving in the WSL?
I think the last couple of years there's been significant investment in the league. Barclays came on as a principal sponsor, and the top players in the world have been coming to the league for a little while now, and it's just taken a little bit longer for the US stars to take that leap. And the international, the schedule across the leagues this year is kind of allowing for it, given the circumstances that we're in. It's really exciting that all of these World Cup winners are coming over and will be gracing the WSL with their presence this season.
Manchester United, the new Manchester United, relatively newly formed. It was only 2018 the current team came into existence. The history of the women's team at Manchester United then, it seems when the Glazers arrived that as part of the cost cutting they cut the team. Was there just so much pressure that Manchester United, the worldwide brand that they are, didn't have a women's team that they had to relent? Is that how this came about?
I think the women's game in the UK has been the landscape of it has been changing, and that was always a conversation that was coming up. Why doesn't Manchester United have a women's team? It got to a point where it became commercially viable, and also it made sense for them to significantly invest in a women's team. I'm very glad they did. It was a real statement in the world, the global game, not just in the UK. So it's taken. They started in 2018, as you said, with a very young squad. There was experience there of players who played in the league before. But now, they're really making a statement with these two signings in particular about where they want to go and where, the plan is for that future development.
The surprise maybe as well is the current landscape in these COVID times and cost cutting and how that would affect the WSL, who are all tied in, the vast majority of them, with men's teams who are trying to cut costs, who are maybe cutting back on their own transfer budgets. That certainly doesn't seem to be the case. It seems as though actually this league and these clubs are going from strength to strength, and that finally maybe the penny has dropped with Manchester United. Liverpool probably still a work in progress, but Chelsea and Manchester City have come around to it in the last couple of years, that this is something that they not just need to support, that is very much worthwhile supporting, that this can be a huge success story for their clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clubs that have always had a one club mentality that encompasses a women's team going from strength to strength. Man City are kind of, one of the more recent examples of that. But when they started their women's team, a few years ago now, they were very much of that opinion. Arsenal have always been doing that. Liverpool, when they won the league, the WSL, in 2015, they were also of that mindset. That's changed slightly over the last few years. But I think we are seeing more and more investment in the women's game from traditionally, men's super clubs, and also, making sure that those clubs that aren't attached to men's clubs are, also getting the support that they need. Bristol City, or formerly Bristol Academy, and we're going from strength to strength now.
The one shame is that they're not able to capitalise fully on all these players arriving because fans aren't allowed to matches by and large. It seems in the past week again there's been huge cutbacks in England as to how many supporters will be allowed in. And I know even from being across in Manchester, and they've such a brilliant stadium in the shadow of the Etihad where you can fit 5,000-6,000, it's a perfect size. Been at a Manchester City Chelsea game, they're getting packed houses for those matches. That's not the case for the foreseeable future. While these big clubs are supporting it now, long term, have you got any sense of what the negative effects of COVID will be and of this crisis for the women's game?
I think it's a conversation that's ongoing at all levels, all kind of points of the football pyramid in in England especially, and across the UK. We don't know yet. We don't really know the long-term impacts and what they will actually be for the biggest Premier League clubs. So it would be a real shame if all the good work that's gone into developing the women's game was to come a cropper because of this pandemic. But I think the structures are well established now at clubs that they've not been relying on. Obviously, crowds are a big factor, but they haven't solely been relying on that. And they'll also be, the fan base is so engaged and so passionate that they will support the women's game in all different ways. And I think it will take a bit of creative marketing, creative thinking about how to best kind of mobilise that support again, if it isn't kind of through the gates. But I think that will continue.
So who are the standout players that people should be keeping an eye out for? Because it is on the BBC. They're showing highlights every weekend, straight after match of the day. So you're getting to see all the games. You're getting to see all the players. Like Alex Morgan, a standout at Tottenham. Pernille Harder, are possibly the most expensive player of all time. Like, we're talking, what, 250 grand of a transfer fee to bring her to Chelsea. Who are the players that over the first few weeks have really stood out?
I think there's been quite a lot. There've been a lot of goals. There's also this kind of, obviously there's been a lot of new signings, but there are also a few players who were signed either partway through last season or, young players coming through. So one player I'm particularly interested in seeing is Sam Kerr, who, did come into Chelsea last season, but, she's just getting kind of used to the league. And linking up, like you say, with Pernille Harder is going to be really fascinating to watch at Chelsea. And they've got a devastating array of attacking talents there. The top scorer and player of the year last season was Bethany England. So where does she fit into that kind of that team with Harder and Kerr? That'll be really fascinating. And obviously Rose Lavelle and Sam Mewis coming in at Manchester City. Lucy Bronze making a return. That'll be really, really interesting to see. They've made a real statement there in those three signings coming in. And then there's some young players also at City. Chloe Kelly coming from Everton. She had an incredible season last season. And one in particular at Manchester United is always going to be one to watch is Lauren James. She took the league by storm, and she's still, really young, really raw, but she'll be playing alongside two World Cup winners now. And what that will do for her development is really, really exciting.
There's obviously a big Irish interest in the league as well. You just have to look at that Brighton squad where you've got the likes of Megan Connolly, Denise O'Sullivan has got there, Rihanna Jarrett is progressing as well, Katie McCabe at Arsenal. They're playing now at the very, very highest level. In terms of contenders then for the league, is it those four, City, United, Chelsea, Arsenal, or do a Brighton have a chance of somehow managing to find a way through?
No, I think it will be that kind of top three from last season. And I think the potential of Arsenal not having Champions League football to contend with this season might play a big, have a big impact on that. Manchester United, I think it's still kind of a team that, they want to be challenging that top three. Whether that happens this season or not, I'm not sure. We don't want to pin too much on, Heath and Press making, the biggest impact, given, the recruits that have been made across the league as a whole. So I think it will still be coming down to Arsenal, City and Chelsea.
The one question, and I guess the depth is increasing all the time and the overall standard is getting better and better. Watching the games over the last few weeks, there's still a few too many 7, 8, 9s being scored that you do have the top 6, 7 teams who are of a very, very high standard. Is there too much of a gap between top and bottom in the league still?
That's a good question. I think 6 and 7s can happen in any form of the game. It doesn't just happen in women's football. Newcastle won 7-1 last night, I think it was. And I think, I think that the gap between the top and the bottom is perhaps kind of widening slightly. But as a whole, the league is elevating kind of together in it being further advanced than it was in just a few years ago.
Yeah, it does certainly seem that way. And as I say, it's very easy for people to access now as well. Here in Ireland, you can watch the highlights on the BBC. And because there's so much Irish interest, we'll be keeping a very close eye on it. Harriet, brilliant to talk to you. Thanks for setting that up for us.
You too. Thanks, Nathan.
That is Harriet Drudge from The Athletic talking about the WSL, and lots more to come on that over the coming weeks.